All right. Good evening, everybody. My name's Kim Norfleet, and I'm with Sumner County Mayor's Office. And we're here tonight regarding two items, the Sumner County Parks Master Plan review and discussion for that, and then also the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. So we have two discussion items. We'll have two presentations, one on the master plan, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments. And then we'll move into the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek, and then open it up for questions and comments on that. So we'll handle them two separate presentations. So that way we can keep the comments separate for each presentation. I'll just kind of open it up and give you an overview of why we are here today. Sumner County has started thinking about this process about a year ago with CSDG, which is a consultant for the parks plan. Just thinking about the long-term vision for the Sumner County Parks system. We currently have 4 properties that we maintain in conjunction with a lot of volunteers as well. We have the Station Camp Greenway, which is 3 Mile Greenway in between Hendersonville and Gallatin. We have the Douglas Clark House, which is the trailhead to the Station Camp Greenway, in a historic house. It was the first county courthouse for the county. And then we also have the Bledsoe Lick Historical Park in Cassillian Springs, which is about an 80-acre park. And then we have the Bridal House in Cottontown, which is a little over 5 acres. And we hope to acquire 2 additional parcels near the Bridal House through a hazard mitigation grant program. So that has the potential to grow there at the Bridal House in Cottontown. So with those 4 parks, we wanted to look at the long-term sustainability for those and the maintenance, what the short-term, midterm, and long-term goals were. So we started the process for the master plan. And then COVID hit right when we were getting ready to start the process. So it was delayed a little bit, and we started this in July with CSDG. And since then, we've been working towards creating and getting to where we are today with this draft master plan. So tonight we'll go over what we have, a draft of the plan, and then we'll also have an opportunity next week, since our first public meeting last week got rained out due to inclement rainy weather. We're gonna have another public meeting in person next Thursday night at the Station Camp Middle School in the cafeteria as another opportunity for if people prefer to be in person versus the Zoom format. So with that, one of the reasons we are also working on the master plan is the creation of the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. When we bought the school property, if you're not aware, in 2015, we bought the property about 265 acres for a new school campus off of Upper Station Camp Creek Road and Hunter's Lane. And with that, Mr. Brown is one of the property owners who we bought the property from. We bought the total property for $3.5 million, which was 2 parcels, totaling the 265 acres. Mr. Brown, when he passed away, donated $8 million to the county. $7.5 million is for investment in technology for the Sumner County schools. And an endowment has been created for that, with the interest earnings going towards technology. And $500,000 was set aside for a public park at the school campus that will be named after Mr. Brown. So it will be the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. So tonight we're going to go over some conceptual drawings for that in order to apply for a $500,000 grant through the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, which is TDEC. So and one of the requirements of TDEC's requirements for the grant is you have to have a parks master plan. So these 2 items are kind of tracking at the same time, with the incorporation of the Sumner County Parks and Recreation Board, which was created in September. And that advisory board has been assisting us with the vision and the mission the core values, which are all components of the Parks Master Plan. So after that long overview, I'll introduce our consultant CSDG. We've got Jim Harrison on here and Josh Bethay, and I'll turn it over to Josh to just kick us off with the Sumner County Parks Master Plan.
All right, thanks, Kim. Everybody hear me okay? All right. So thank you all again for joining us this evening. Pulled up the screen here and recognized some of the names and faces on the screen, so appreciate you all joining us again. For those of you that haven't seen any of this, we welcome you. We look forward to going through the document with you. As Kim gave an overview, pretty good overview of what our goals are for this TDEC grant, wanted to get into one of those pieces, which is the Parks Master Plan that we've been working on with the county. This Parks Master Plan is contextual in nature. The goals of this Parks Master Plan are not to specifically identify just yet properties that are locations for parks, but we're setting the framework for the future of Sumner County parks and really starting this from scratch. So when we get into the Parks Master Plan, I'll give you an overview as to how we got to where we are today and what you'll be seeing and what will be available for you potentially by end of day tomorrow, if not by Monday. On the county website will be a copy of this presentation for you to also look at in your time away from tonight, because you'll probably be consuming a lot of information in this short amount of time. So with that, I'll get into sharing my screen here. Kim, I think I have that ability. Here we go. Let me know once you see that. Do I see that okay?
Yes.
All right. So let's go to the master plan here. So again, as I mentioned, this is a draft of this master plan. So what you see is a moving, living, breathing document that we're continuing to develop literally as we speak. We've had a lot of really good input. We've had a lot of really good meetings and a lot of good feedback from the Planning Commission and parks and planning directors around the county. We've had a tremendous amount of input on this project. So with that, we start off by acknowledging everyone that has participated in some form or fashion, whether it's through input or public survey or the multiple virtual meetings that we've had through COVID. So everyone that's been associated with that is listed on this acknowledgments page, and that includes the public. We've also had some over 800 participants or individuals that have participated in our online survey. So we want to definitely recognize the public, and those of you that are on the call tonight, and those of you that will see this video and want to come out to the public meeting next week. We look forward to talking through this with you, and we appreciate your input as we work towards our final goal of completing this package. A really quick overview of what I'm going to go through with you, really the introduction of why we're here, the purpose of this project, the creation of the mission statement for the Sumner County Parks Master Plan and what the vision is. We'll go through that master planning process and that engagement process. And then we've done a really deep dive into the inventory phase of Sumner County, really talking about looking into the history of the county, the historical timeline, the culture, the demographics, the ecological factors and framework, county-wide facility inventory. So what we go through tonight, as Kim mentioned, we only have 4 existing properties. They're part of the Sumner County Parks, will be a part of the Sumner County Park System. The 5th one coming online would be the Liberty Creek Plan, which we'll get into later this evening. But we also wanted to look at the county-wide properties. So that's parks and trails and landmarks that are associated and within the municipalities within Sumner County. So that's the county-wide facilities. Then we'll look at the existing county facilities. We'll look at those relationships between each other and also the city limits, the municipalities that surround them, the multimodal connectivity, and how the Sumner County Master Plan is working to follow in line with the 2035 Comprehensive Plan of Sumner County and the goals that have been set forth within that, so that we make sure that we align with that document. We also look at the projected county growth. We've had some really good input through Greater Nashville Regional Council, and they've done a really comprehensive study as to the growth patterns around Middle Tennessee, specifically Sumner County. Civic input, we've had a lot of meetings, so we'll go through that. We've had a lot of meetings with different municipalities and different groups within the county. And then, as mentioned, the community input, public input. We'll look at the current staffing, funding, and maintenance system in place. And then what's the future of the park system? So that's setting forth the guiding principles, the core values, the master plan goals, in which those break down into short, mid, and long-term goals. And then the action plan, which is more about the process afterwards, so implementation and environmental planning guidance and where funding will eventually come from. So as I mentioned, this is a working document. Don't be alarmed if you see some things that are maybe not complete. We're still populating input from public meetings like tonight and meetings with our Parks Advisory Board. So with that, I'll get into the introduction. Again, talking about the purpose behind this is creating that plan that responds to the current and future parks of Sumner County. And that's identifying those existing facilities around the county, understanding the expected growth and where demand for future parks will be. We're also identifying gaps in connectivity in the county, opportunities for growth in those areas, determining the needs of the current and future facilities, and then providing guidance on implementation and developing an action plan for implementation. The mission statement as it exists today, it's a working statement here that we're working on with the Parks Advisory Board. Kim, I believe maybe you mentioned the Parks Advisory Board was formed in September, specifically for this task to help spearhead this process in creating the park system for Sumner County. So that mission statement currently, as we're looking at, is to provide access to cultural, historical, natural areas through a safe, well-planned, and managed system of parks that preserve, protect, and exemplify the unique outdoor experiences and educational opportunities available to all citizens and visitors of Sumner County. It's a lot of language in there, but what it really represents as a whole is what we've heard from the county and what we've heard from leaders within the county is the importance of the cultural aspects of the county, the historical and the natural elements, and how do we preserve, protect, and exemplify those and connect people to those. So the master plan process, as Kim mentioned, we started this process really last year, but really because of COVID, we started some of the meetings a little later than we wanted to, starting with a TDEC meeting back in June, and then moving into a kickoff meeting with Sumner County planning directors from the different municipalities. And we've been working with Gallatin, Goodlettsville, Hendersonville, Millersville, Mitchellville, Portland, Westmoreland, and White House in the development of this. And as I mentioned, with GNRC. So that process is kind of consolidated and working towards, as Kim mentioned, a grant application with TDEC for December 7th. We've already submitted a preliminary version of this, and we're working through that with TDEC to advance that to the final stages for that submittal in December. So this is an overview. I won't go through every meeting, but this just gives you an overview of the input that we've provided, the meetings that we've had, and then some of the meetings that are forthcoming, some of those public meetings, planning commission meetings, and county commission meetings that are upcoming. So with the inventory, so inventory is a big part of how we get to our goals. Pardon me there. So we look at the county history, and really there's a lot of culture and there's a lot of history behind Sumner County and how it evolved. A timeline, kind of snapshot here, talking about the Native American history to the land here, the settlers that moved into the area and as they moved westward across the United States, the development of North Carolina and Sumner County separating from North Carolina and eventually into Tennessee, and then basically the growth period that happened within Sumner County. And the history of country music is a big part as well, not just some of the cultural elements that go back into the 1800s. Music is a really big part of Nashville. We know that, and a lot of that happens in Sumner County, and some of those musicians currently make their home in Sumner County. Culture and demographics is a big part of our study, and so really understanding where we are from an age distribution in the Sumner County population. So you can really see on this graphic down to the left, really since the 1960s, the upswing of the growth within the Sumner County. Based on the 2010 census, Sumner County had roughly 161,000 residents. As of 2019, with the 2020 census coming out soon, 2019 was estimated at roughly 191,000. So just in those last 9 years, you had an increase of another 30,000 residents into Sumner County. And this gives you also a snapshot as to the income levels around the county, the poverty level, how Sumner County ranks lower than the United States and then lower within Tennessee. Cultural, looking at the ethnicity and language differences, primarily English, white, transitioning into Black, African American, Hispanic, trending downward to the Native American ethnicities within the county. So this really is a good snapshot for us to really understand who our residents are when we're creating this plan. We also look at the ecological framework, the ecosystems, the vegetation, the ecoregions, the vegetation, the topography. Sumner County has a really unique combination of vegetation, topography, and hydrology, with over 43 miles of frontage on Old Hickory Lake. I think that's pretty significant that we want to recognize that. And this page is important because when we get into goals later, you'll see a similar graphic later that this graphic helped us determine what some of the future goals of the county should be when we talk about parks. You can see this band that comes across the middle of the county, and that's where we have a lot of topography, and that's where we have the majority of the forested areas within the county. The countywide facility inventory, and Kim, I'll keep an eye on the time, just try to chime in if I need to pick up the pace. Countywide facility inventory, as I mentioned before, we looked at all the different parks, trail systems, and historical cultural sites around the county that happen to fall within most of these municipalities, whether they're city-operated, state-operated, or by the U.S. States Army Corps of Engineers operated. But what we want to focus on as part of this master plan are the 4 county-operated facilities within Sumner County. And as Kim mentioned, those are Bledsoe's Fort, Bledsoe Lick Historical Park in Castilian Springs, the Bridle House in Cottontown, the Douglas Clark House in Gallatin, and Station Camp Greenway right there at the Douglas Clark House in Gallatin as well. So this master plan, as I mentioned, we want to focus on the existing facilities first, focus on what we have, and look at investing in those. So we do a deeper dive into each of these facilities with a little bit of a summary on each of these facilities, again with Bledsoe's Fort and its historical story behind it. the Bridal House and a overview, kind of a quick snapshot of the history of the Bridal House, Douglas Clark House, and the Station Camp Greenway. Currently, the Station Camp Greenway, as most of you are aware, runs between Long Hollow Pike and down along Station Camp High School, past Saundersville Road, and into some of the neighborhoods that are developing down here to the south. And that has been constructed and recently in the last 3 to 4 years. This plan was from 2017, so implementation is fairly new. And here's a few images of Station Camp Creek. We also look at the relationships between these. So starting with the Bridal House up here in the top of your screen, really it's the most separated from the other parks or other facilities within the county and the cities. 4 miles to the future or under construction Liberty Creek Schools and the future William and Martha Brown Memorial Park located at Liberty Creek. Then kind of doing a 1 mile, 2 mile radius off of the Douglas Clark House, which is also a Station Camp Greenway trailhead. You can see the vicinity in its proximity to Liberty Creek in the Martha Brown Park. It also gives you an idea of really how close the Station Camp Greenway is into Hendersonville, into Gallatin, and the possibilities for working with those jurisdictions in the future to expand. To the east of the county is where we have Bledsoe's Fort and Bledsoe Lick Historical Park and Castilian Springs. They're the burial grounds in that area. These are also what surrounds Bledsoe Fort are state-maintained properties in Wynwood and Craigfont and Hawthorne, but we want to recognize the cultural and historical significance of what happens in that area. It is separated quite a bit from Gallatin, close to 6 miles before we really get into some of the parks and the schools within Gallatin. But we're really within about 3 miles of Bledsoe Creek State Park, and I think that's really makes this area a little bit unique and when we start talking about cultural connectivity. The projected county growth is something that we looked at. So this diagram that you see on the screen is produced by GNRC. This is the projected growth of Sumner County through 2045. The darker the purple, the higher the density projections of population. Overlaid on top of that with these white circles, we've indicated in our meetings with both planning directors and GNRC and county planning staff as to where they're seeing future growth happening within the county. So that GNRC data lines up pretty well with what we're hearing from the county officials as well. And this will come into play again later, again, while we go through this inventory process is working towards these goals. We've had a lot of civic input, and I'll pick up the pace a little bit right here because there's just a lot of text, and again, you all have access to this presentation later to read through, but we talk about our meetings with Gallatin, Goodlettsville, Hendersonville, Millersville, Portland, White House, Sumner County Schools, GNRC, and the key findings that we found through those meetings. We've also had, as the development of the Parks Advisory Board, which was really going through a SWOT analysis of talking about the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that we have as a county. And some of those overlap, but by having a new parks system, that is a strength. It is also a weakness and an opportunity. And we, in our meetings with the Parks Advisory Board, that's how we've created a lot of the goals for the county, and the vision and the mission statement have come from those meetings. We've also met with the Bledsoe Lick Historical Association to get their input on what they see for the future of Bledsoe Fort and the property there. We also got their input on the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park, presented that plan to them as well. So using that opportunity to talk about what will be a future park within the master plan, it's just not constructed yet. So a lot of good input from that will let you guys kind of read through that as you access this document. Community input, or let me pause before civic input. We've also recently just had meetings with the Tennessee Trails Association, the Sumner County chapter, and also Friends of the Bridle House. So those are two more pages that'll show up in this document and more individuals that'll be recognized as part of their input. Community input, some of you may have been aware that we put out survey markers all around the county to do an online survey. We've had over 800 responses to date, and the list of those are over here on the right. Those were put out at 50 different locations around the county. And we've had some really good input, and really how we've used that input is, what are we seeing the residents for Sumner County, what are they wanting, what do they want out of their parks? So a few snippets from that survey is determining how far people traveled to the parks that they visited, why do they typically visit, and what would they like to see at those. We also heard some additional things that were not included in our survey, or not included as options, and we've listed those here. We did hear a lot about conservation of land and habitat for wildlife. We also heard a lot about the authentic character and the historic sites around the around the county. The current staffing and funding and maintenance. Currently, Sumner County does not have funding necessarily. Let me back up. Has limited funding and staff associated with this, with the facilities. There's a lot of volunteer effort that happens with these facilities that's a little harder to quantify from a funding standpoint, but funding from, we're doing a little bit of a bigger breakdown of this as we get into it more, but really by starting a park system, naturally we don't have a lot. So there is a partnership with the Sheriff's Office and Sumner County Schools for maintenance and equipment, and with the Sheriff's Office, they have a series of equipment that's being utilized to maintain some of these properties. So this sets the tone for us on when we start talking about future goals, what does the park system need to expand into, and from an equipment standpoint, from a funding, and from a staff standpoint. So then we go into the future of Sumner County, and this is where it gets maybe a little bit more exciting instead of the inventory. We talk about those guiding principles and how they set the tone for the future of the county. One of those, really, this has come from those meetings with the municipalities and specifically too with the Parks Advisory Board. We have a really diverse Parks Advisory Board with a lot of people with different backgrounds. But they're also very well connected into the county. So through all those meetings, we've helped craft some guiding principles and core values, and a lot of it is focused around preservation of natural, cultural, and historical. You heard that earlier in the mission statement as part of the county. Really focusing on the county properties, having an opportunity to invest money in those elements, and not focus as much, at least in the short term, on some of the active facilities with ball fields and things like that, that we have a lot of within the municipalities. Health and wellness is a big part of it, and also a 2020 Tennessee initiative is really talking about public health and getting people out into nature. And then connectivity. Connectivity is something that we'll focus on in the future. In the short term, we want to focus on a lot of the preservation, but connectivity is important in the fact of where our parks and our recreation facilities exist, and how we're getting people to the bodies of water that Sumner County has. Those core values, again, stewardship and sustainability, preservation, conservation, and restoration. You'll see that time and time again through this document. Health and wellness, community enrichment, so by creating programs for children and getting children out into nature is really important goal. Also, when we get into the Liberty Creek plan, you'll see more of that as well. Diversity, safety, accessibility across the county, and resiliency. I think this COVID and pandemic has been an opportunity for us to learn, to talk about resiliency. We've heard a lot about the parks, directors saying that their parks around the county have been inundated with people getting out into nature, which is really exciting. Those master plan goals kind of develop into a bigger, expand here into talking about access to parks, network expansion, sustainable funding, something that becomes a long-term, ongoing goal for the county. Again, health and wellness, and investing in the cultural aspects of the county. So I'll go into some short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals to round out the future section of the county. The short-term, we want the existing facilities, we want to invest in those for improvements, and we want to implement the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. Those are our immediate short-term goals. And the midterm goals are really creating creating that parks department, what the operational needs are, what the funding is necessary for that. Long-term, looking at opportunities to expand into the county, acquisition of properties, expansion of facilities based on county growth, and then looking at program offerings for the surrounding communities, and then, like as I mentioned before, establishing a sustainable funding source. So short-term goals, Bridle House is one of the properties, one of the county properties, and in our meetings with Friends of the Bridle House, some of the short-term goals associated with that will be potentially a walking trail that goes around the property. Currently, the Bridle House owns the property here and then across the street. Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Bridle House property is roughly 6.8 acres between the two properties. The community center that's across the street is part of that. The Bridle House goals they would like to see more walking trails. They would like to remove some of the invasive plant material. Station Camp Creek runs right along the edge of the property. There's an opportunity to eventually create a crossing. The county is looking at potential acquisitions of property around the Bridle House to expand it. So as that comes online, creek crossing maybe comes into play as an addition for the Bridle House. And I'll mention that these are goals that are being established. They're not yet funded or approved yet through the county, but through the Parks Master Plan, we want to establish some of these goals so that we can have them in the master plan so that when funding becomes available, we can apply those funds to these needs. Bledsoe Fort, we've had some really good meetings with the Bledsoe Lick Historical Association and really good conversations with them on how they would love to see that property expand. They have roughly 80 acres on that property, roughly 90 acres on that property. The current trail system runs in this kind of blue line here back to the old Bledsoe Fort site where the old cemetery is. There's a Long Hunter Camp, spring house, and then the Cavern of Skulls. If any of you have been there, it's a beautiful piece of property, and I think there's some really good opportunities. We as a team think there's some really good opportunities for Bledsoe Fort to have more trails. Their immediate needs will be constant repairs of some of these historical buildings. That's an ongoing thing. Also, better presence along the highway here with signage and a little bit more security. Currently, the property is only secured by signage and relying on people to come and go at proper hours. So the idea would be to eventually implement some sort of gate to keep people out in the late hours of the night. The Station Camp Greenway and Douglas Clark House. Douglas Clark House, located here along Long Hollow Pike, is one of the trailheads. So at that location, we'll have some ongoing repairs that'll be associated with that building. So we want to make sure that we focus on those improvements. And what we've also heard along Station Camp Greenway is it spans about 3.1 miles of trail system are additional signage, bench locations, emergency call buttons, that if someone is in an emergency, they have an opportunity, they're within a short distance of an emergency call button, and the mile markers to also kind of identify how far you are along the trail. So these again are goals for Station Camp Greenway to expand in the future, and as money becomes available through the county or through donations, we want to determine how we prioritize those being applied to Station Camp Greenway. Those are the short-term goals from our existing facilities. So I'll do a quick pass-through on the Liberty Creek plan because we'll do a deeper dive into that with that separate presentation. But one of the short-term goals is the implementation of the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. So that's one of our proposed and will become the 5th county property. This is an existing photo of the site, some of the old farm roads that exist on the property. Location map, you can see Long Hollow Pike, Hunter's Lane is the access here to the south of the property, Upper Station Camp Creek Road here to the east. And what that plan looks like, well, again, I'll go through this kind of quick, many of you are probably familiar with the Liberty Creek campus. If you're not, this is a quick overview of Station Camp Creek Road to the east, and as I mentioned, Hunter's Lane to the west, the southwest. The elementary school is currently under construction. The high school is currently under construction here to the east. The middle school will be coming on after those. And this area that's highlighted in the yellow in the middle is the property that's being dedicated as part of which will be the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park. And what that plan looks like is an expansion of the existing home that's there. The home that's on the site was built in the late 1700s. The part of the grant application does not include the restoration of the Brown family home, but there are separate funds allocated from the school that are being applied towards restoring that property. So it is part of the property, and it's a big part of the story and preservation as we go back to some of those key words, preservation of this property. So in that area, there's a really good stand of trees, and we felt that's a really good opportunity for a pavilion location. This will be a public park. We'll have accessible walkways from a parking and trailhead here along the school spine road that comes through. This will all be a public road with public sidewalks accessing this trailhead and this parking lot. And on the site, we have some high points that we want to accentuate with some overlooks, and we want to really embrace the natural elements of the site. There's some existing farm roads that we want to utilize as part of the trail system. We also see it as an opportunity for partnership with the school for natural trails for potential cross-country meets that could be out here. These are all things that we've been exploring as we've developed this design, but we really want to focus on a lot of the natural elements and preserve as much of the native vegetation that we can and replace some of the invasive material that's out there. To the south of that road, we do have a creek that runs through the property. We'd like to propose a creek crossing that takes us over to that site. And we're currently looking at the potential for a natural amphitheater, whether that happens in this first phase or in future phases of the park. We really see it as a good opportunity for educational opportunities within the park system. Other trails up to some of these high points around the park. And as I said, we'll go into a deeper dive in the next section of the presentation. This is just a really diagrammatic, illustrative view of one of those overlooks. I'll flip back to the page before. This illustrative is taken from this high point up here, looking down back towards the existing home and where the pavilion would be. And so we see that as being an opportunity for a pavilion, in the distance back here for as part of that plan, low impact trails, locally sourced materials, repurposed site features by using some of the boulders and things for benches, and increasing the natural and native vegetation there to bring back some of the the natural habitat and wildlife. So that's our short-term goals. Long-term goals, we're looking at different opportunities, and as I mentioned before, in the inventory process, really studying the county and looking at the topography and looking at these different growth patterns within the county. This is an overlay of a lot of colors that show a lot of this growth that is expanding north from Gallatin and Hendersonville, south from Portland, and south from White House, and north from Millersville, connection there. And this green swath that kind of comes across the county is that topography and a lot of the vegetation in the middle of the county. So as we started looking at long-term goals for the county, we talk about facility expansion and opportunities for getting people out to nature. Sumner County has a really good opportunity to do that and bring people into these areas. And again, it's very diagrammatic and it's very contextual in nature. We're not pinpointing properties at this point, but some of our long-term goals as we get further into this is starting to help the county understand where would be ideal locations to start looking at property for acquisition or donation to develop for a long-term outdoor trail system, hiking trails, equestrian trails, mountain biking trails, all the things that we've heard from the residents of Sumner County of what they want. So then putting it into action is the implementation process, and this is just a really summarized version of that, but it's really setting up a framework for the county to understand how to identify properties going forward, how to plan for those future facilities, what's involved in the design process in getting community input and focusing on safety and accessibility, and then the building process, setting forth the guidelines for monitoring the bidding and construction process as it's implemented, and then maintenance. Maintenance is a big part of this implementation plan. We also have a environmental kind of overview guidance, and again, the master plan that gets adopted will be an expanded version of everything that you've seen here. For the sake of time and everyone, and the fact that we're developing this, we're just kind of summarizing it for you tonight. From an environmental guidance standpoint, we talk about state and federal permitting, who's involved with TDEC, the Army Corps of Engineers, Tennessee Valley Authority, what federal permits may get triggered when we're looking at some of these natural areas, working with the county and municipalities for stormwater variances, really understanding the property, so a lot of investigating and reporting as to what's there, designing in a sensitive manner to avoid and minimize impact on the property and on the streams, and looking at mitigation where necessary and what that process is involved. And then we have some federal items that trigger us with National Historic Preservation and Endangered Species Act. Funding strategies is something that's an ongoing process for us, and what we're talking through with the county on currently aligns with some of those long-term goals of where funding currently will be coming from, how it's budgeted into the annual plan, the fiscal plan for the year, how we can seek donations and encourage donations around the county, how we can go after additional grants, with an example being the TDEC grant application that we're submitted for on the Liberty Creek plan, and really establishing what those strategies are going forward. So with that, that's a real pretty quick overview. I feel like I talked forever on that, but like to open it up at this point. Kim, if I guess you'll have control over that if you want to open this up, or if we've received any comments, anybody's has asked any questions through the chat box. We'd like to maybe spend 10 minutes or so looking responding to your questions because we want input for this and we want your input to be implemented into the overall plan.
Yeah, if I've unmuted everybody, so if anybody has any questions or if you prefer to use the chat box, you can ask your question there, and then I can read your question if you prefer that.
I guess a big question is what source of funding we possibly have other than doing a funding drive and asking for donations? Or is that the plan?
One other example of funding is what we're planning to do at the Bridal House in Cottontown. There's two pieces of property, two parcels that are prone to flooding, and they've had repetitive flooding from the 2010 flood, and then since then, at least 3 times since then for those two properties. And we are applying through the hazard mitigation grant program.
Yeah.
And acquiring those two properties. We got awarded just in the last 2 months through the state and FEMA. So we'll be working with those property owners on the appraisal process. It is a voluntary program, so we will complete an appraisal and then offer the fair market value based on the pre-flood value. So they'll look at their property that it as pre-flood, that it never flooded before. So that is a good program because it doesn't look at it as it's damaged. So that hopefully will be beneficial to those two property owners. But what it is acquisition demolition to open space. So it'll be included as part of the passive park as part of the Bridal House is our plan for those two parcels. If everything goes through by 2021, we should acquire those two parcels adjacent to the Bridal House. So that's another option that you can do, open space acquisition for passive park through the hazard mitigation grant program.
Would volunteer work out on the Liberty Creek Park, would that count towards helping us to get the funding from TDEC that we're searching for, that we're asking for? You
can do in-kind donations. They prefer a cash match just because it's so much easier. But they do allow in-kind donations as well.
But if I say the Rotary Club wants to go out there and help blaze a trail out around the park, a walking trail, naturalized walking trail, would that, I guess that's in kind, or is that?
If it fell within the scope of the grant period, then we could work with TDEC to see if we could quantify that as part of the match. In this case right now, we do have the $500,000 from Mr. Brown from the endowment trust to match the $500,000 from.
So we've got enough funding right now then.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that could be something in the future that if as a second phase, if there's other improvements, we could utilize that. Yes.
When I used to live in Virginia, the Virginia State Parks Association worked with a number of organizations, and they came out with a pretty nicely planned program where they tickled people's minds in the area of planned giving, in the area like for wills and things like that, the people who were prone to be pro-environmental and pro-parks and pro-greenways and things like that. They sent out it was really an organized program, like if you're bent on these kind of things, here's one thing you may want to consider in your trust or your will, and that's a planned giving to the state parks and the greenways and all those kinds of things. And from what I was able to understand over there in Virginia, it worked out very, very well. They got quite a good response, and I suppose you've already thought of that, but I thought at least I should mention that anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I'll definitely look into their program as well to see if we can get any good input on some guidance document for that.
Hello, this is Carla.
Hello, Carla.
Hi. I checked out the layout of the park and the trails, and everything looks really great. I just have one question. Will the park be pet friendly?
Yes, it will.
All right, thank you. That sounds
Carla,
great.
breaking up there. What was your question, Carla?
Whether the
I
park,
had asked if the park would be pet friendly.
Pet friendly. Okay. Sorry.
yes, we will have signage. The pets will need to be on a leash.
Of course. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any other questions regarding the master plan? And
Yeah, for anybody that's on here, if there's something that you didn't see as part of the master plan that you felt should be addressed, you know, we'll have an opportunity for you to provide some additional input. But if there's anything that you can think of specifically, we're looking for just input on this master plan as a whole, and how it can better capture the vision for the county. If there's anything that you all feel is worth adding to that, we'd love to hear it. But otherwise, we can move on to the next section if you think so, Kim.
anybody else have any other questions or comments towards the master plan? And if you have any thoughts in the next week, we will be taking additional public comment, and then we'll also have the next public meeting next Thursday, November 12th at the Station Camp Middle School cafeteria at 5:30 p.m. as another opportunity. And we'll have larger presentation boards of the maps there. And then also this presentation tonight will be posted on the county website tomorrow. If you want to view this video again and look at the maps, and then we'll also have the document posted with a link. All right. If there's no other questions, we'll move into the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. And this is regarding what we're going to apply for through the TDEC grant application.
All right. Everybody still see the screen okay? Okay, as Kim mentioned, the goal for the grant application goes towards the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park. As I mentioned earlier, location, just to kind of orient everyone, is north of Long Hollow Pike. So I'll zoom in here. Long Hollow Pike, Upper Station Camp Creek Road. So here's the project site highlighted in bright and red there. Access to the southwest of Hunter's Lane, which is one quick turn off of Latimer Lane. And Kim, is it possible to mute everyone?
Yes, I'm going to do that. It might mute you for a second. All right, we should be good now.
Okay. So I'm trying to minimize a couple things on my screen here. As I mentioned before, I don't know where the mouse keeps disappearing to. There it is. So the Hunter's Lane entrance is over here to the southwest. Upper Station Camp Creek Road entrance is to the east. The high school campus that's currently under construction has the majority of the athletic facilities associated with Liberty Creek High School, or with the Liberty Creek School. Elementary school currently under construction as well. The middle school kind of naturally falling into the middle of the property here. There's a spine road that runs east to west, kind of across this site here and follows the lower contours or the lower elevations along the property, and then generally gently climbs up to this area here before it drops back down to Station Camp Road. The area highlighted in red is the park property, and we'll go into a blow-up of that. The existing conditions on this property, we have about, in total, we have 49.7 acres to the north and 38.37 acres to the south of this spine road. These are what we've defined as, in combination with the school, the appropriate boundary for the property. Some of those constraints that we have and some of the items that we want to accentuate on the property, there's a lot of topography on this plan, and I'll pull up a topography map in a minute and you can see the overall view of the region. But generally, this road runs kind of across the low part of the property, and then we climb midway up to where the William and Martha Brown home sits today. And as we go up a little bit higher, we have a high point up here closer to the TVA easement, overhead power easement, and then we have another one over to the west here, another high point, and to the south we have another high point. Really, this creates an interesting triangle of view sheds that we've created for people to be able to get to when you look at that plan here in a minute. There's some existing farm roads on the property that kind of run across the ridge up here and also run up from the creek up past the Brown family home and up to the top here. We have some creeks to the south, so we have some stream buffers to deal with there. Most of that's been accounted for already through the design of the Liberty Creek School. We do have a creek on the north side of the property as well that we're working around as well. Some of the other elements in here, part of the requirements through the school development, in this development, we have these creeks that run down the property on the side here, these draws that we want to minimize what goes into this basin, this drainage basin here. So part of the plan through the school is implementation of native vegetation. That's what this yellow dashed line represents going across the plan. So that's the plan, is to remove invasive species and put back natural native species for butterflies and other habitat for that region, for this region. The plan, this is just an overview plan, and then we'll go into a blow-up of each of these white boxes. But as I mentioned, when we started looking at the design of this plan, keeping the William and Martha Brown home centralized, there's a really good stand of existing trees in that area, so that created a really great opportunity for shade and public gathering. And we, instead of looking at parking all the way up at the top of the hill here, we elected to propose parking to the lower side and create an accessible walkway that goes up to this point of the property where we could have a pavilion located in the middle of that. To the top of the property, we want to accentuate those overlook opportunities with trail overlooks, and I'll zoom in on each of these in a minute as well. We also want to create a trail overlook to the south with the potential for a natural amphitheater, which may or may not happen within this first phase, but we are exploring it as part of our funding with our grant and also county money to facilitate that. The blow up here in the middle of the plan, again, is just a better view that you can see the existing home. And again, this is all very schematic at this point, and what we'd like to come away with from this meeting with you all is input on what you would like to see at this location, how you think that the plan could improve, and we want to implement that into a revised schematic that goes back to TDEC as part of this application. So within that property, some of the key elements, some of the key components that we're including are a pavilion here in the middle. This is a 40 by 60, located just off to the east of the Brown family home on a really nice point here where this kind of falls off down to the creek. So it's a really good overlook kind of point down to this natural tree row here. Character imagery for that is this is a rock castle, which many of you are probably familiar with. Pavilion structure. The goal is to do something similar that's accessible, that has restrooms, lighting for outdoor venue opportunities for music, potential weddings, and people to be able to utilize that for private and public events. The blue areas, the blue lines here represent our accessible pathways that get us from the parking up to the pavilion and to the Brown family home. And we want to keep some of these green lines that are in here represent more of natural trails that we want to have that are mowed pathways, very low impact on the property. You can see the image kind of down here to the right of what that might look like. And then we want to maintain some of the existing farm roads. So coming up from this pavilion point to go up the hill, again, the view I showed you earlier, this is the view looking back down the hill, maintaining that farm road up to the hilltop. Utilizing some of the natural stone that's coming off of the school sites to create some seating opportunities. Helps us with long-term maintenance for the property, that we have natural elements that will weather well, versus having to spend additional funding on benches and things like that we might have to replace and repair later. Some of those accessible pathways, this is just an example of what that might look like. To the north of the plan, as I mentioned, those two high points, this is that farm road coming up the hill to that overlook, creating an opportunity for a view back down that hill. This is that farm road again, kind of coming that way. Maybe there's an opportunity for a covered structure at that location. That would be a simple structure, roughly a 10 by 25, an opportunity for people to have go up and have their lunch up there with some picnic tables, some chairs, simple construction with wood and steel. And again, more of those mowed natural trails. And what you'll see across the top here is another farm road that runs along this tree row. So we want to keep that farm road and give people an opportunity to access this other high point where we would have another opportunity for an overlook, a shade structure with picnic tables. When we go to the north side of the site, the topography really gets a little bit steeper, so it gives us an opportunity for a variation in our trail network to have some more hiking type trails that go through the woods. Again, these being more nature, so a combination of mulch and gravel type pathways that go through the trees, very low impact, and taking more of the natural trails across the TVA easement, not impacting the creek setback that we have that exists over here to the north, and working our way back up to the overlook point here. To the south, we have a crossing that we would put in across the street. This will be a public road, so we'll want to have a signalized pedestrian crossing here for safety for people leaving the parking area, coming across to where we would have a Trail Creek crossing shown here in this image to the bottom left, and having more natural trails along this side and the potential for the natural amphitheater. If you can see the image down here to the right, just an example of what that natural amphitheater could look like, and utilizing some of those existing materials on site to create that. To give everybody a really clear understanding of what that property is, this is a dedication exhibit that would identify the park property. So we have that established as part of this requirement, part of this application with TDEC is the legal boundary of what that park is. So again, 49.7 acres to the north and 38.4 to the south. This is a big overview topography map of the region. And I'll show you as I zoom out here, again, Long Hollow Pike here south of the site, Upper Station Camp Creek Road running to the east side of the property, Hunter's Lane here. So you can really see we're surrounded and we have a lot of really good topography. A lot of, when we have these high points, if you see on the site, those are the ones that we were highlighting on the plan, exist across the property. Part of this is the school. The park exists roughly right in this vicinity. So those 3 points that we were talking about really are right here in this vicinity. And that's the overview of the park. I did have that other exhibit that I wanted to pull back up that was part of the master plan, and that's this view here as kind of an illustrative. This will be included in our the exhibits that you see online, specifically to the park plan. But this is just to set the tone for what we want that park to be, and we want it to be a lot about nature and really giving people an opportunity to get out into nature. We want to focus on the environmental education aspects that come with the proximity to the schools. You know, this is a good public health opportunity as well to really get people out and get people moving. I think we've all experienced it through COVID that really getting out of our homes and away from our offices. We really want to get out into nature. So the Liberty Creek plan really really captures everything that we see within the Sumner County Parks Master Plan, which is really trying to preserve a lot of the natural elements and having low impact on a lot of these properties and focusing on bringing people back to nature. Really see it as a good opportunity of bringing people in from the community to really potentially increase their property values around this area. It's anytime you can bring a park into a community and have people have closer access to that, it really helps from an economic standpoint. So with that covers the Liberty Creek plan, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Again, when we focused on the master plan, a lot of what we were looking at on the master plan from the economics, basically of who our population is. We're targeting everyone in this vicinity that's growing around Gallatin and Hendersonville and growing kind of into this region. So this plan goes hand in hand with a lot of the things that we mentioned in the master plan. I think Kim covered most of everything else when we were talking about funding, the funding being the $500,000 donation coming from the Brown family with the goal to get a matching $500,000 grant from TDEC. Kim, I'll leave it, maybe open it up to you if there's something I did not cover that we want to address real quick before we open it up for discussion.
Sure. Just overview. We mentioned it as part of the master plan, but the population based on the 2019 numbers was 191,000 people in Sumner County. So those will be the users of this park here that is proposed at the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. And as part of this, we plan to have the improvements, just kind of go over. The budget is $1 million for this project. The house improvements for Mr. Brown are not included as part of this grant, as Josh mentioned, in that we do plan to have the pavilion with the restrooms, a parking lot as part of this project, some signage with the parking lot kiosk, the paved path to the pavilion, and a paved path down across the creek to that pedestrian crossing on the southern portion of the park. Nature trails as part of the project. As part of the natural amphitheater, we hope to use that as an environmental classroom, which will meet one of the Tennessee's 2020 initiatives as part of TDEC's master plan. And we'll have the natural grasses with the wildflowers, the overlook structures, and around Mr. Brown's house is some historic split rail fencing. So we plan to repair that around the perimeter of the house to set the stage for the park and its historic qualities. So that kind of explains the budget. For the timeline for the project, we plan to apply. The application is due December 7th. Hopefully we would find out from TDEC by the spring and definitely by the summer if we're awarded. And then from there, we would complete the environmental review, move further into the design phase, because this is just a conceptual drawing at this point. So we would go through the engineering and design for the park at that point. And then go into the construction phase, which it would be competitively bid, with the goal to have the construction kind of track at the same time with the elementary and the high school, and potentially, hopefully, if not all of the park would be online, a portion of it would be open when the schools open, hopefully in the fall of 2022. So we still have a little ways to go on the timeline, but that's the goal right now for the intended timeline for the park to come online. I think we've covered everything. I'll unmute everybody if we have any questions, comments. If you feel like we need something different or something, move some qualities, aspects of the park, we're looking for your input, because this is a conceptual drawing. So and y'all are the users of the park. So we'd like to hear your input on this conceptual drawing. Y'all should be unmuted. If anybody has any comments.
Well, every time I look at this plan, I get pretty excited, and I'm very happy that Sumner County has this opportunity to have such a great area and park to use for its citizens. And just to think about the fact that this is going to be here 100 years from now, and Sumner County citizens will still be using it. It just gives me chills to think about what an asset it is to the county.
Hi, this is Carla again. I have another question.
Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You talked about planting native species. Will there be an opportunity to plant native species and native trees in the park and then label them as part of an educational opportunity?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of our, I apologize, my camera kept dropping, so I just turned my video off so it stopped looking at the floor. The parts of the plan that we're looking at are, again, the educational opportunities and that connection to the school. And that's some of the feedback that we've heard, is identifying some of the plant material that's out there, creating educational signage. So to identify some of the species of plants that are there. We also have some, endangered species on the property with the streamside salamanders, which we're working through to protect those with TDEC. So we want to educate people on the salamanders as well as the vegetation there.
Great. The plan sounds great. I love it.
And if we didn't mention, you know, one of the goals of this, pairing this plan with the master plan is to create that long-term goals and the short-term and midterm goals that we have within the county to further develop not only the existing facilities that we have, but also identify properties like Liberty Creek that we want to use this as an example to set the tone going forward when we are developing new properties around the county, how this could be a good example from a natural, cultural, environmental project that the county can be proud of, and that exemplifies everything that the master plan sets forth as far as the goals.
Any additional questions or comments? If you don't want to ask them, you can always put it in the chat box and I can read it.
Well, Kim, we want to talk about what happens next.
Sure.
Yeah, so as Kim mentioned, she gave an overview of the timeline of what we're working towards to kind of lay it out for everyone else and what's involved. We do have this master plan tracking moving forward, as well as the Liberty Creek plan with TDEC. The next meetings that we have coming up, we have a meeting tomorrow as a follow-up meeting with some of the planning directors to go through the same document that you've seen here and talk about how we can implement any more of their feedback as we finalize the master plan and as we finalize the Liberty Creek plan. We also have a Parks Advisory Board meeting, which Kim, I believe, is a virtual meeting, and that's available to the public as well.
Yes, next Tuesday
Yeah, so
at 5:30, and the link is on our county website under the county commission for that.
And what we'll do through that meeting is work with the Parks Advisory Board to finalize some of the language that's within this document, something that the Parks Advisory Board can feel proud about and also be prepared to go forward with in recommending to the Planning Commission as we move forward. The next meeting that follows up after that is next Thursday, the 12th. We'll have another public meeting. That's, as Kim mentioned, we got rained out last week. We did have a few people, but we wanted to extend this to more people to have another public meeting. So that meeting will be November 12th at 5:30 to 7 o'clock. It'll be at the Station Camp Middle School in the cafeteria. So as Kim mentioned, we'll have some boards there, and we'll be able to socially distance, but present the plans here and get some feedback from additional people there. Then the next steps after that is final recommendation from the Parks Advisory Board to send to Planning Commission, which we intend to do on November 17th, and that's 1 week prior to the November 24th Planning Commission, where this master plan and the Liberty Creek plan will both be discussed at the Planning Commission. And the goal from that November 24th Planning Commission is to gain recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission. And on November 30th will be our last meeting with the County Commission, where we are looking to formally adopt the master plan document as a county document and finalize any comments that come from that to submit the final TDEC application on December 7th. Did I miss anything there, Kim?
No, I think that covered everything for the next upcoming meetings. Any information will be posted on our county website. This video tonight of this meeting, along with the attachments, will also be posted on the county website by tomorrow afternoon. If anybody has any questions or comments or in the next week, feel free to email me at knorfleet@sumnercountytn.gov with any questions, comments, and we can incorporate those as part of the master plan document, or also the William and Martha Brown at Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. You know, if y'all really want to hear about this again, we're gonna have another public meeting next Thursday. So y'all are welcome to join us then if you want us to look at it again. So. Does anybody else have any questions or comments before we end?
Sorry. Next Thursday, the 12th is at 5:30 at Station Camp Middle School.
Yes,
All right.
in the cafeteria.
I don't think I got an email about that one. Has that been,
I sent it out yesterday in my emails
okay.
to the Parks Board, but I'll resend all the links again, just to make sure everybody has it.
Must have gotten it, but I probably got a bunch in a row and didn't see it, I guess.
Yeah, the next committee meeting of the Parks and Recreation Board meeting will be next Tuesday, November 10th at 5:30, and it's a virtual Zoom meeting.
Okay.
There's no further questions, then I guess we'll close this public hearing meeting for the master plan in the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park at Liberty Creek. Thank you.
Yeah, want to thank everybody. Thank you for your time for this evening. And we look forward to potentially receiving some additional feedback from you all once you've had an opportunity to review more of the document. And we're excited to move this forward as something that the county and as you as residents of the county can be excited about and proud of. So I think it's an exciting time for Sumner County to put this into place, and we're excited at CSDG to be a part of it and work with you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. This was a great presentation. It looks like the plans are all kind of coming together now.
Great. Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you. Have a good
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.